Hello, third graders. I wanted to give you another lunchtime reading. We are starting a new book. It is called, I need to move that. It is called Door in the Wall. And it's a great story that is written by an author named Marguerite de Angeli. And as you know from your IEW writing last week, that every story starts with a setting and introduces its characters. And so I'm going to do that for you real quick before we start into this book. The setting is, the time period is back in the Middle Ages, around 1350, during the Black Plague, which was all over Europe and originated from China into Europe, as they believe, but it was a devastating time where 1 out of 3 people were killed by it. I think that you might remember some of this from reading Story of the World, as well as Matthew's presentation on the Black Plague or the bubonic plague. Anyway, it was set during that time period, which is around 1350, and the place is in England. And so I'm going to show you, that's why I'm here, and this is Mingmei's room, by the way, and she has this map that we put together. It was a puzzle years ago, and it's the only map I have in my house, unfortunately, but here I'm moving this to show you England. So now if you find the continent of Africa, you remember that the Mediterranean Sea, which kind of looks like a flying duck, is right above that. And if you find the Mediterranean Sea, you can find so many places in Europe that are around that. Right. And so this is set in England. And England is right here. The United Kingdom and England is this section right here. So that is where our story is, this island, and it's called England. Here's France. Here's Spain. We've talked about that. We've recently talked about Africa and the bulge of Africa with Ghana. And now today our story, Door in the Wall, let me put this back down, is set in England. Okay? Now, we also have characters in the story. Many characters are in this story, but our main characters, right, the antagonists, the protagonist is the main character, remember that, is a boy named Robin, and Robin is only about 10 years old in the story, okay? And then a man named Brother Luke comes into the story a little bit later in this first chapter. So Robin is the boy, and he's our main character, the protagonist, as well as Brother Luke is also a protagonist in the story. He's a monk. Brother Luke is a monk or a friar, which is a man who has devoted his life to God, and so, yes, Brother Luke. Okay. There's the father and the mother of Robin that you're going to find out. Robin is only 10 years old, and if you remember, we had a section in our Story of the World where we talked about knights. And remember how a child or a boy who would set out to be a knight would start off as a page, right? And they would go and live with a family who would start teaching them how to be a knight. And there would be a knight there in this family, and they would go from a page, and then eventually they would become a knight. Well, that was what was going to happen with Robin at age 10. He was set to go off and live with a family to learn how to become a knight. But something happens. First, his father is also a knight, and he goes off to fight in some wars in Scotland. So his father has to leave him. And then his mother is somebody who is close to the Queen of England, and she is needed suddenly as a lady-in-waiting, which is basically a servant in the High Court. And so she's going to help the Queen of England, who needs help at this time. So she has to leave Robin. And the day after she leaves Robin, she thinks that Robin is going to go off to this family and learn how to become a knight. But something happens to Robin that keeps him from doing that. You'll find that in chapter 1. All right. So let me start reading. Okay. Robin drew the coverlet close about his head and turned his face to the wall. He covered his ears and shut his eyes, for the sound of the bells was deafening. All the bells of London, which is in England, were ringing the hour of nones. St. Mary le Bow was nearest, St. Swithin's was close by, these are churches, and not far away stood Great St. Paul's. There were half a dozen others within sound, each clamoring to be heard. It seemed to Robin as if they were all inside his head, screaming to be let out. Tears of vexation started to his eyes, but he held them back, for he remembered that a brave and genteel knight does not cry. Ever since he could remember, Robin had been told what was expected of him as son of his father. Like other sons of noble family, he would be sent away from his mother and father to live in the household of another knight, where he would learn all the ways of knighthood. He would learn how to be of service to his liege lord, how to be courteous and gentle, and at the same time strong of heart. Robin thought of his father and how he had looked on the last day when he rode off to the Scottish wars at the head of the column. Now, remembering, Robin could almost feel the weight of his father's mailed glove on his shoulder as he said goodbye. Then he had been straight and strong, standing there in the courtyard as the men rode forth. "Farewell, my son," his father had said. "Forget not to be brave. God knows when we shall meet again. Farewell." He must not cry. Robin thought of his mother and how she too had said farewell the day after his 10th birthday. She had called him to her side in the solar where she sat weaving. "Since your father left for the wars, it has been a comfort to have you near," she said. "But you are 10 and no longer a child to be looked after by womenfolk. It is time now for you to leave me. John the Fletcher will come for you in a few days and will take you to Sir Peter de Lindsay, as we have arranged. There, too, you will be away from danger of the plague, which seems to be spreading. And now it is fitting that I obey the wish of the Queen to be her lady-in-waiting, for she is in need of my care. Today an escort will be sent for me, and I shall go. John the cook, Gregory, and Dame Ellen will serve you until John the Fletcher arrives. Farewell, my son, be brave." She had drawn Robin to her and had turned away so he would not see her tears. Little did she know how much Robin would need her, for the very next day he had become ill and unable to move his legs. That had been more than a month ago. So he's remembering back to when he said goodbye to his mother, when she left, and then he's waiting for John the cook to come and get him, John the Fletcher to come and get him and take him to the knight's house. But she had left, and then the very next day he becomes ill. And now he's thinking back, so that was a month ago. All right. He was cold. He wished Ellen would come to mend the fire. The bells stopped ringing, and Robin heard the boys from the brothers' school running and shouting along the street. He hoped that William or John, Thomas or Roger would come in to tell him the news, but when their voices grew faint, he knew they had gone on past. How he wished he were with them. Even the tiresome lessons of singing and reading would be worth doing if only he could run down the street with the other boys. But he could not run. He couldn't even get out of bed. Because he was unable to see out of the wind hole, which is the window, Robin had learned to guess at what was going on down in the street. He knew the sound of armor and knightly equipment, for the king's men passed that way going to and from the Tower or Westminster to joust or tournament, to to parade or on business for the king. A horse was passing now, but Robin was sure it was not of that order. It was probably the Shire Reeve's horse, for above the slow clatter over the cobbles, Robin could hear the grating of runners on a kind of sled the horse was dragging. From the odor that came through the window, he could guess that Wat Hochester had been taken again for selling putrid fish in the market stall. Robin chuckled. He knew that soon Wat would be standing in the stocks near the fish market with his evil-smelling goods hanging from his neck. Now Robin heard the sound of Dame Ellen's feet shuffling along the passage to his wall chamber. He turned his head to see what kind of dish she carried, but quickly looked away again when he saw that it was a bowl with steam rising from it. Was it barley soup? Was it a stew of rabbit? He didn't know and didn't care. The thought of it was all mixed with the sickening odor that came up with the raw wind from the street. Ellen's skirt brushed the bed as she leaned toward Robin. She was near enough so he could hear the creak of her starched linen coif as she peered at him to see whether he was asleep. He shut his eyes so as not to see the great whiskered wart on her chin, and tried to close his ears to the sound of her Cockney speech. She saw by the squinching of his eyes that he was awake. "Turn over, do. There's a good lad," she said, intending her voice to be soft, but it was not. It sounded harsh and flat, as if her mouth had been stretched too wide, thought Robin. He shook his head and closed his mouth tight against the food. "Wilt not have this good porridge all with honey spread?" Ellen's coaxing voice went on. Robin shuddered and buried his face in the cushion. If only his lady mother were here, she would have seen to it that the porridge had been smoothly cooked and salted. She would speak in her gentle way with pleasant mixture of Norman French and good English words that were becoming the fashion. If only she was here, all would be well. The damp, sweaty feeling would leave his head. His legs would obey him and take him where he wanted to go, racing up and down alleyways or along the high street. He would be running with the boys down Pudding Lane or across London Bridge, playing tag among the shops. But his legs would not obey him. They were like two long pieces of uncooked dough, he thought, such as John the cook rolled out on his molding board. Ellen tugged gently at the coverlet, which is his blanket. "Sweet lad," she begged, "'twill give thee strength and mend those ailing limbs." Robin would neither turn nor answer. Let her take the sickening stuff away. Let her throw it into the street on top of that fishmonger who had just gone past. "Come, my pretty." But Ellen got no further with her wheedling. Robin gathered all his strength and flung his arm toward the bowl of porridge, sending it flying out of Ellen's hands and spreading its contents all over her. He was ashamed as soon as he had done it, but Ellen did look funny with the mess hanging from her chin. "Wicked boy," she cried, "no more will I serve thee. Scarce able to stand have I been this day, yet have I been faithful, but I am a free woman and can go my way. Just wait and see when more victuals are brought thee, ungrateful wretch." She burst into loud weeping and left the room, wiping the porridge off her apron. Robin turned again to the wall. "She will come back," he thought, "as she has done before, and she had better bring something I like if she wants me to eat it." But she didn't come back. An hour went by, then another hour. It grew colder and colder. Robin examined for the 100th time the carvings on the hammer beams supporting the roof of the hall. Each one was an angel with feathered wings. He studied one by one the grotesque carvings of dwarfs that decorated the roof bosses and the corbels finishing the doorway. He wearied of thinking about them and wished that Ellen would come. Robin's bedchamber was off the main hall or living room of the house. in an embrasure of the thick wall. An embrasure is like back in when they had these big buildings made out of stone, they would have an embrasure, which is like kind of a big opening in the wall. And that was where his his room was. Like the hall, Robin's room was somewhat chapel-like, for the houses of the time of Edward III of England were very little different from churches. Afternoon sounds came into the room, people passing along the street to and from the shops in Cheapside or Poultry Lane, carters carrying goods to the wharves on the Thames. The Thames is a river there that runs through London. Bellinsgate or Queen Hithe, these are all places. He heard children playing games, hoodman blind and hide and seek. He wished he could have been among them because he knew a secret nook where he always hid and where he was seldom discovered. It was down Honey Lane in the angle of a jutting wall near Blackfriars Entry. It was so small a space that it appeared to be no space at all. It was still his own secret. Robin tried very hard to get out of bed so he might look out of the window, but he only fell back again into the pillow, exhausted from the effort. Hunger bit at his empty stomach. He was hungry enough now to have eaten the porridge Ellen had brought him. He listened, hoping to hear her footsteps in the passage, but the house was strangely silent. No sound of talk or laughter came from the hall, for most of the servants and retainers had gone either with his father, Sir John de Burford, excuse me, or with his mother, the Lady Maud. Robin called for Ellen, and when he had no answer, called for John the cook, and then for Gregory, the gardener. He listened again, holding his breath, but he heard no one and saw not a soul from nones to vespers when the bells began to ring again. He was alone. Just as the bells stopped ringing, Robin heard a noise, as of a door opening. Then someone mounted the stair and came along the passage. Perhaps it was one of the boys, but not likely, for whoever it was walked rather slowly instead of running, as William or Thomas or John would have done. The footsteps turned toward the chamber. In the doorway stood a monk with a basket. He came toward the bed where Robin lay. "Good eve, my son," he said. "I am Brother Luke, a wandering friar, newly come to St. Mark's. I have brought thee food, and cause 'tis Friday, fish." Fish! Robin's stomach took a sudden turn, but a good smell came from the covered basket Brother Luke carried, and he was hungry. So he smiled a welcome, and the friar explained how he happened to know that Robin needed help. "A poor widow who twice a week is fed from our hospice," that is a place where people live and are taken care of. It could be a hospital, or it could just be a place where there are nurses that are caring for you, or monks. And so he said, "A poor widow who twice a week is fed from our hospice told me of thy need. She said that Dame Ellen, who lately served thee, has this very day been taken of the plague." So Dame Ellen didn't come back because she got sick with the plague, the Black Plague. "She it was who told us that all thy servants too are fled because of the plague." So all those servants that should have been there in the house with him had gotten sick with the plague, and some are dead of it. "Dame Ellen told thee not, pitying thee. Now be a good lad and take thy supper." Robin obediently ate what the friar fed him. When he was fed, Brother Luke, who had talked quietly the while, fetched water in a basin, washed him, and in other ways made him comfortable. He took the rumpled sheets off the bed, then sat down to rub Robin's legs and back. While he rubbed, he spoke. "It is well known that thy noble father hath of his goodness given money to St. Mark's." St. Mark's is a church. "So to St. Mark's I'll take thee. and will care for thee in mine own quarters, because all other beds and places are already taken by those in the parish who have great need. Even the corridors are filled, and the cloisters lined with pallets. But I cannot walk, said Robin woefully. See you, my 2 legs are as useless as if they were logs of wood. How shall I go there? My father is with the king at the Scottish wars, and with him are all his men at arms. My lady mother has been commanded to attend upon her majesty the queen. It is supposed by them, my parents think, that I am now page in the household of Sir Peter de Lindsay at his castle in the north. John the Fletcher was to have come for me in March before the feast of St. Gregory. Instead, a messenger came on that day to say that he had been set upon by thieves and lay wounded in the hospice at Reading. He came later to fetch me, but found me thus, unable to walk or ride. He brought a surgeon who said I had not the plague, but some other malady, some other sickness. He told Ellen, Dame Ellen, to feed me well, and that he would return. He came not again, nor did John the Fletcher. Alas, said Brother Luke sadly, because of the plague, all the physicians are working night and day. Either he himself has been taken, or he has been so busy caring for others, he has not been able to return. As for John the Fletcher, he may have gone out of the city gate and not been allowed to re-enter, for they are keeping strangers out now. Fear not for the manner of our going to St. Mark's. Tethered in the courtyard is a jennet, ready saddled with blankets whereon thou'lt ride softly. So Brother Luke has a jennet, which is a small horse for Robin to ride on. Walking beside thee, I shall support thee, and so we shall go through Nightrider Street and Giltspur to Ludgate, and then toward Smoothfield, where stands St. Mark's. Dost remember the long wall that is about the garden of thy father's house? So he's saying, do you remember this long wall that is outside your father's house? Yes, said Robin, of course. Why? Dost remember, too, the wall about the tower, or any other wall? Robin nodded. Have they not all a door somewhere? Yes, said Robin again. Always remember that, said the friar. Thou hast only to follow the wall far enough, and there will be a door in it. And remember, our story is called The Door in the Wall. And so this was very good wisdom that Brother Luke was telling Robin. He said, remember how big those walls are that are around towers. Remember big walls around towers? Well, they would be made out of bricks or stone. Well, they always, somewhere along the wall, had a door in it. And so Brother Luke is saying, don't forget that along the long wall, there's always a door to find. Okay. Always remember that, said the friar. Thou hast only to follow the wall far enough, and there will be a door in it. I will remember, Robin promised, but he wasn't sure that he knew what Brother Luke meant to say. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and then we will read more probably later this week. Okay, thanks for listening, you guys, and have a great afternoon.